Hello everyone, this is Ray again. Welcome to the new series of Korea Unveiled. This series is about understanding Korean society. To be honest, this is one of the subjects of KIIP Level 5. KIIP is an exam for naturalization, aka Korean citizenship. However, the subject contains various topics from politics, history, culture, geography, and more. So I think this could be helpful for people who are interested in Korean society in general. Also, I hope you guys can use this as a substitute for your study for KIIP exam. And I won't be able to include every detail of the topic each time, unlike my normal lecture. However, I would like to provide necessary information and general information. Also, the lecture will be conducted in English, mostly. There's a reason for this. So the topic for KIIP Level 5 about understanding Korean society contains a lot of different resources and topics. And the contents are generally difficult. And I think it's safe to say that some of the contents are difficult even for Koreans. So there's very common situation happens when you guys take lectures in Korean and just don't understand what's going on, because the topic, vocabulary, concepts are generally very difficult. So what I want you to do is understand everything in English as possible, but I'm going to provide the lecture slide on the screen in Korean. I hope it's helpful, and no more explanation, let's begin. So first concept that we're going to study is characteristic of Korean family culture. We're going to start with families in the past. So back in the day, there were a lot of people in the family, and in Korean it was called 대가족. So includes grandparents, parents, children, even relatives, your uncles, aunts, your cousins, pretty much everyone. So there were definitely a lot of family members, a lot of children. And you can see it from the picture on the left. And if you Google 대가족 or Korean family in the past, one of the many encyclopedia will show up this picture as an example. So as you can see, there were a lot of people. So the reason that they have so many people in the family like the picture is that before Korea experienced a rapid economic growth, a lot of people depended on farming for a living. So farming has been number one income source for Korean families for a long time. So every family member count as labor source. So that's where it started. So moving on, we're going to study more specific characteristics of the family. And first thing you have to remember is Confucianism. So Confucianism has introduced to Korea for a long time from China. And that has influenced Korean society heavily, and also family. So one of the features that you need to remember is that there are clear distinguishment of elders, youngers, men, women, parents, children, and king and his servants. So that applies to family too, meaning that men had their own role and women had their own role in the family in perspective of Confucianism. So in general, men provide for the family, and women raise children, takes care of the family, and also takes care of house chores. So that was very specific. The next feature is decision making. So decision making in terms of family is always male centered, very patriarchal culture. So if someone says head of the family, it's usually male, usually the father or eldest son. And if let's say there's a family with the grandparents, parents, and children, if the grandfather passed away, grandmother can be considered as head of the family, but in the decision-making process, she would respect her eldest son's decision. So in the end, it's very male-centric. Another feature that we're going to see is filial piety, in Korean, hyo. So as we said, there is clear distinguishment, meaning there are clear instruction of how to respect elders, how to respect your parents. And it was very common for eldest son to live with their parents and take care of them. Moving on, we're going to talk about family nowadays. So usually in KIIP we refer it as a nuclear family, 핵가족, which consists of parents and children, specifically unmarried children. In 90s or even early 2000s, this 핵가족 would mean parent and 2 kids. But nowadays, it's mostly parent with 1 kid or no kid. And we are seeing noticeable increase of single-person household, married couple with no children, multicultural family, single-parent household, and adopted family too. To be honest, in my opinion, this is welcoming change to Korean society because this means we have more diversity coming in. And to be honest with you, I think these different types of family has been exist in Korean society. However, they were just invisible for a long time or very difficult to make themselves, presented. I think it's very welcoming change. And another characteristic we can see is that now for decision-making process, families discuss together. This is very big change. Back in the day, it was just man's opinion, father's opinion. But now, people discuss together, make decisions together. And they divide their house chores, raise children together. And there are a lot of people who decide not to get married or just get married in later stage of their life. And more common for married couple to have only 1 children or decided not to have any children. About these characteristics, I'm going to share something that KIIP book doesn't really introduce you guys, but something definitely talk about, which is this one, about house chore, decision making, and raising children. Compared to the Korean society back in the days, it's changing, and it's true. But to be fair, I wouldn't say that it's 50-50 for every household. And even like for household who both the parent works and provide for the family together, share the house chore or raising children in a 50-50 ratio. I think it's not that common yet. It's still more considered as women's work. And even though fathers nowadays contribute much more compared to fathers back in the day, but still we're not there yet, but we're getting there, and there is more contribution coming in, more welcoming changes coming in, but it is still considered more of women's work. And I hope to see more changes coming, but this one would not appear on your test, but this is kind of trend that happening in Korean society, so I wanted to share it with you, to understand the Korean society better in general. Next, one we're going to talk is how to refer family members. So you should not be confusing this with pet name. So this is more referring term, like how you call your mother and father. You call them mom, dad, it's not a pet name, so it's a referring term, definitely. And it's more common to call someone in family member with the term. So for example, between couple, it's 여보, 당신. This is gender neutral term, can be used either way. And there's another terms to call your spouse's parent. So in general, when you call them, you say 어머님, 아버님. But to be specific, if a husband refer the parent of wife, wife's side parent, they can say 장모님, 장인어른. And there's a more term that if you want to refer your husband's parent, you can say 시어머니, 시아버지. So these are terms, like referring term. So for example, you might call your family member with their name, maybe maybe acceptable in that other society, but in Korean society it's more common to call them with the specific referring term. Another feature that we're going to talk is how to call your children. So not just calling about your little children, but this is also about your parent or in-law call you or your spouse. So for example, there's a referring term for calling a woman who's either your daughter or your daughter-in-law who have children. Normally what they come up is putting children's name in front of and add 엄마 or 어멈. So for example, if someone's name is 영지, the mother or mother-in-law can call her 영지 엄마, 영지 어멈. And there's also for same goes for the other spouse. If the son has children and there's parents or parents-in-law, call them let's say the son's name and the baby's name is so 영지. So 영지 아빠, 영지 어머. And also there's a specific term for calling your son-in-law. They put their last name here and add 서방. So for example, their last name is 이, then they call them 이서방. But nowadays, there are more opinions saying that this is more kind of discrimination against women's family, because as we covered in the last slide, there's specific term for referring parents-in-law, especially wife's family. So there are now people talking about, we should just call everyone 어머님, 아버님, regardless of whose parents it is. Because that's fair. They're parents at the end of the day, so it's fair. So there's opinion definitely for that. And another thing that we're going to discuss is 촌수. So in Korean it says 친족 사이에 멀고 가까운 정도를 나타내는 수. So basically it's the same way we say first cousin, second cousin, how far or how close you are. And for between spouses, there's no 촌수, so you are 영촌. And between parent and children, you're 일촌. And between siblings, you're 이촌. So that's how they distinguish it. You add up to it. And I gave an example about 작은아버지, which is your uncle. 작은아버지는 아버지의 동생이므로 나와는 삼촌입니다. So 작은아버지 is basically your father's younger brother, and so that makes you 삼촌. So I'm giving you guys more like a image about it. So there's parent and there's children, and there's your uncle. And between siblings, you are ichon, and with a parent you are ilchon. That's how I show it. And then your uncle and you are samchon. So sometimes people just call them simply samchon, and sometimes they call them 작은 아버지. But nowadays it's more okay to call them either way. It's perfectly working term. For your information, I'm not really giving you a very specific information or method to count chonsu, because counting chonsu is very confusing even for Koreans, and not many Koreans, I think, know how to do it. And the reason I'm doing is that there are so many topics that cover in KIIP Level 5, and chonsu is very confusing even though you put your effort in and study for that. So what I'm trying to do is that I want to make you get familiar with the term and maybe introduce some specific chonsu for some people, and that's all you need to know. I think it's okay if you want to study further. That's fine. But this is generally a very confusing term, and I think it's not really good idea to invest so much time to study for this. You're more than welcome to study if you want to go further, but I want you to consider a more strategical approach for the test. And I think this is it for today and it for family culture. And we're going to talk about more stories coming up. And if you have any question, you can leave it in the comment. And thank you for coming for this episode, and stay tuned for next episode.